Okay, so we're going to start now. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Malou Schloss from TrainingPros, and it's my privilege to welcome everybody this afternoon to our webinar, very important webinar on job aids. So for those of you who've just joined, this is the first time that you're joining a webinar with us, I want to let you know a little more about TrainingPros. TrainingPros works with clients that usually have a learning or a technical communications and documentation initiative, and they either don't have the right skills internally or they just want the right skills for a particular length of time. So that's what we specialize in. And if you are a consultant who's good at this particular skills, learning or technical communications, you should get a hold of us, and we would love to invite you to our talent pool. And a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Malou. That's short for Maria Luisa. Don't need performance support for that. Or some people call me Skip2, as in short for Skip to Malou. And I serve the clients, our clients in the Northeast, specific concentration in the greater New York market. And my background is mostly in IT, financial services, insurance, healthcare, and education. And now I'm involved with staffing and relationships and sales and marketing. So it's a different part of my career. Interestingly, too, I co-chair the ATD New York City Performance Support SIG. So this topic is one that's very close and dear to my passions. And here's a little summary of the type of TrainingPros talent that we can provide you. And a word about Harrisburg. We've been in partnership with Harrisburg for almost 2 years now. And this is one of the best kept secrets in webinars. We get a ton of invitations to webinars all the time. But trust me, most of our webinars are very good, and people actually ask for the podcast. And if you register and you're unable to attend, we will make sure that you get a copy of the podcast. So it's a great learning product, and it's free. So enough about that for now. I wanted to introduce our speakers, and most of us have heard about these two guys from our exposure to learning and Peregrine Performance Systems. I'd like to introduce first Russ Powell, and I asked the two of them, what was your most memorable trip, and also if there's something that we should remember you by, what should it be? So Russ shared with us that his favorite trip was to Pushkar in India, in the region of Rajasthan. That sounds a lot more exotic than most of our vacations. And he particularly liked the Pushkar Lake, in the which is a sacred Hindu site. That's I would love to go there. It reminds me of all of those movies about India. And one thing to remember about Russ is that we should call him, and if we come across a team that is underperforming, because for 6 months in the early 90s, he says he earned his living as a professional juggler, if you can imagine that. So professional juggling to what he's doing right now, which is performance support, that's a pretty amazing trajectory. Now I also want to introduce Joe Halpin. And Joe's most memorable trip was to Costa Rica, where he said the insects are slipper-sized. And if you didn't see Sleeper, that's a movie with Woody Allen with giant fruits and vegetables, and I think also giant insects. And in a previous career, this is something most of us will be very curious about. He did PR for celebrity authors such as Smokey Robinson and Leroy Neiman. If you don't know Leroy is an artist who paints a lot of images with fancy sporting events. And that's about it. I hope that's something to remember about our two speakers, aside from what we're going to learn this afternoon. Thank you.
So thanks, Malu. This is Russ's voice, and let's hear from Joe real quick so you can start to get to know our voices.
Hi, everyone. This is Joe Halpin.
Great. Thanks, Joe. And welcome. We're excited to be presenting this to you, and we should start off just to let you know and kind of set expectations. When we do this live, you know, like a big conference, we usually tell people this is going to be the least sexiest program you're going to experience here. And part of the reason we do that is that we're really going back to basics. What we're going to be talking about here is not rocket science. It's pretty simple stuff, but we think it's really important, and that's why we're doing this. And we've had a few sellout crowds now, so we're assuming that it's pretty important stuff for you guys as well. And let me just show you real quick our agenda here, our game plan. And first thing we want to do is learn a little bit about who you are. We'll tell you a little about who we are, why we're here. We'll go into what an exemplary job aid is, and we'll be asking you in chat a bit to help us with that. What are some of the advantages of job aids? What is a quote-unquote good job aid versus a bad job aid, things like that. How do you create one? The bulk of our program is going to be on our 7 steps for creating job aids, and then we'll offer some ideas for how you can take some of this with you. And one of the things we'd like to highlight is we changed the name of our program for this group. We have some synonyms for exemplary, like exceptional, damn good, world-class, excellent, things like that. And most of the time we use the hashtag, let me see, I can bounce over here, pound damn good job aids in Twitter to help tag content for this program. And we would like to ask you if you have any inclinations towards live tweeting during this session. Please use that hashtag. Take a photo of yourself looking at the program, or if you see a slide that you like, capture that with your camera and tweet it for us. So, okay, and also just to help us make sure you can use chat, if you would find the chat section there and let us know what is your biggest obstacle to creating performance support tools, to creating job aids, those kinds of things. What is your biggest obstacle to creating performance support tools? If you would pop that into chat for us, and we'll take a look as you go. Okay. And so a little bit more about why we're here and how we ended up here. Malu helped introduce Joe and me, but part of the reason this or the way this program came about was Joe and I, we've been building training programs and tools that support training and consulting around those things for over 20 years. And there was, for me, it seems like about 2 years ago, maybe, there was kind of a straw that broke the camel's back moment where we turned over an e-learning program with a great job aid attached to it to one of our clients, and they said, you know, we really like the training that you guys produced for us, but what we loved was the job aid that you left behind. And it was kind of weird how that it hit me at that time that there's something here. We need to be paying more attention to the job aids we produce, and we did that, but we also created this program to start sharing some of our experiences and how we do what we do in an effort to help others learn from our successes. So hoping that kind of helps set up why we're here. So, all right. So thanks for posting into chat there, and we'll try and reflect back on some of that as we go. So let's using. Oh, I'm sorry. We had a couple of polls for you guys to help us get to know you better. Justin, I'm going to look to you. Would you mind putting the skill level poll up? Let's take a look at that real quick. So if you would respond to this. What is your skill level with the design and development of job aids? And you'll see the scale goes from new or low to very high. So if you would take a look and pop your answer in there, and we'll give you just a few seconds to do that. So about 5 more seconds, Justin, and then we'll. Can people see the results?
Yes, sir. They're being brought.
Fantastic, thanks. Okay, so it looks like about at least half of the group, you're at least competent. You think you're pretty high as a performer when it comes to the development of job aids, thanks. And very few new people. For new people, please don't be spooked. This is fun stuff and good stuff. So, all right, great, thank you. And how about let's go to the next poll. This is about your role. We're curious about your role. So this is a multiple check item. So if you would just scan down this and check whatever roles apply to you. And please work pretty quickly there. So, okay, lots of instructional designers, content developers. Looks like, no, what is the 0 associated with? Is that operations managers? Oh, no, we've got at least one of, what is it, line manager, operations manager. Okay. But the bulk of our audience are instructional designers. Great, thanks. All right, and if you're an other, we've got a handful of people. Please let us know in chat what your other is. Oh, we didn't include trainer. Thank you. We should have done that. All right, great. Okay, I want to keep us moving because we've got a lot to do here. So Justin, if you don't mind, let's go to the next one. And this is asking why you are here. And if you would just type your answer in there, keep it brief. We want to keep this moving. But we're curious, what's the business reason that you're here? What are you trying to do? You know, saving time, saving money, reducing risk, increasing safety, improving skills, those kinds of things. And I'm thinking business reasons, right? So why does your business have you here, right? So, okay. Great, thanks. Okay, a lot of stuff just about improving job aids, it seems, or your skills around job aids. Okay. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but I'm thinking to just take that to the next level. When you talk about increasing your skill level at building a job aid, why? Okay, what's the impact going to be for that? So, thanks, Justin. So we'll study this a bit later. Let's go ahead and keep moving. So back to the slides, and so I think our next slide is a question for you guys. So again, in chat, if you would, tell us, so we're thinking, what is an exemplary job aid, okay? So we're going beyond mediocre and we're going beyond good. What is a great job aid? What are some characteristics of a great job aid, an exemplary job aid? So let's see, effective job aids could take the place of e-learning courses. I like that. All right, so please type in chat. What is an exemplary job aid? Characteristics. Okay, simple, concise, I like that. Quick reference tool, one-stop shop for information, great, efficient, easy to understand, visually appealing, simple, clear, easy to follow, intrinsic, I like that. All right, doesn't try to do too much, I like that, easy to use, okay, great. Sounds good, thanks. So this is mostly to help you guys get thinking about this. Let me show you what our list typically contains when we're thinking about an exemplary job aid. So there are 5 things that we tend to look for in order to call a job aid exemplary. So number 1 is it's a repository for information, right? Information processes or perspectives. And the queen of job aids, if you have not read her, we highly recommend Alison Rossett there. Okay, she's got a definition. Whether a poster, a pencil, a manual, a sticky note, an application, it must store and make accessible the information processes or perspectives on which human work and activity are based. Okay, so it's external to the individual, at least for now. I don't know, does anybody have a job aid implanted in your head yet? Let me know in chat. I'm kidding. Okay, so it supports work activity, it directs, guides, and or enlightens. And it's exemplary, meaning that it works very well, okay? We tend to use that as the differentiator between good and exemplary, okay? It works very well. All right, let's see, let's go and keep moving. So we also want, in order to help us define this, let's look at what this is not, all right? So it's not a tool, a screwdriver, for example, an office chair, a pencil. And if you would, I'd love to ask you, why is a screwdriver or an office chair not a job aid? So pop that in chat if you would. Okay, why is a screwdriver or an office chair, for example, not a job aid? I mean, it's helping you in your work, right? So it's also not instruction, right? And this is an important point, or training. Training prepares you for an event that's going to happen in the future, right? A job aid helps you with something that happens in the moment. All right, and we also tacked on here that it's a job aid must be usable, right? So if it's unusable, we're not going to call it a job aid, or at least an exemplary job aid. Okay, and a quick point to help illustrate this, we've got some job aids we'll show you briefly from the airline industry, and I didn't know a thing about these, but I have a friend who's a pilot, and we were talking through what job aids were and what training was. He was confused. He's like, Russ, I don't understand. Help me out. What's the difference? We talked about it a bit, and this, you know, I explained that training prepares you for an event in the future, and, you know, job aid is used in the moment. And he goes, oh, I get it. When you're sitting on a plane and they show you the video that walks you through, you know, how to put your seatbelt on and how to handle oxygen masks and things like that, that's training, right? It's preparing you for an event in the future. But when the plane lurches to the side and the oxygen masks drop from the ceiling and you go, oh, insert expletive, where is that card? You're now reaching for the job aid, right? So I'm hoping that helps make more sense about when you're thinking about job aids versus training. Okay, so, and the main point for my first question there about the screwdriver or office chair, those do not convey any information. They don't hold any processes or procedures, right? So that's kind of why we're saying a tool is not a job aid. When that tool when it has information it conveys, then it becomes a job aid. Okay, so another question for you guys, what are some of the advantages of job aids? Why would you use job aids? Help us with that. So in chat, if you would, what are some of the advantages of job aids? Cost effective, quick reference, saves time, great, thanks. It's there when you need it. Good reminder. Glenn, thanks. You can't memorize everything. Where would you put it? Right, great, thanks. So just to keep us moving, I'm going to show you what our list of, you know, the top advantages of job aids are. And there's one of our favorite quotes from Joe Harless, one of the godfathers of job aid design and development. So we think just-in-time availability, right? It's right there when you need it. It's simple. It's relevant to the job, right? Saves time. It reduces a need to recall information, so there's the memory connection, and it minimizes errors. So that's the top of our list. And Joe, I wanted to ask you, you brought up a statistic or something for me yesterday about the money that we spend in training. What do you recall about that?
Yeah, so we were talking about in 2016, according to Berntson, and if you're not familiar with Berntson, they're a Deloitte company that does a lot of research in the learning and development industry, human resources, so forth, human capital. You know, $160 billion spent on training alone in the United States in 2016. And, you know, it got us thinking, you know, wow, there's still so many issues with training and development, learning and development, human capital management within organizations. We just need to make it more simple, I think, is our philosophy at Peregrine Performance Group, and really focus on performance. You know, that is the performance in our name. So, yeah, it just makes you think about, you know, how can we make things a lot more simple to reduce time and save money.
Thanks. That's one of our assumptions in putting this together, and why it's been fairly popular, is that I think people are looking for cheaper, faster alternatives to training, and job aids, good job aids, certainly represent that. Yeah, so thanks, Joe. So really quickly, I wanted to give you a few examples, and these are coming from Mr. Harless, Joe Harless. This is from a job aids workshop he did many years ago, and these just help kind of bring some of the advantages we talked about to life, right? So in this first example, this is an electronics manufacturer, and you'll see he took a 1-week training course and reduced it to 1 day with an accompanying 8-page job aid in performance if proficiency increased by 50%. So let's throw some numbers behind that just to make that real. So we're talking about, imagine 56 hours versus 1 day, a job aid and better performance. Which one are you going to choose, right? So the second one, right? So here's another example. This is a chemical company who, using job aids, reduced an error rate in insecticide formulation from 10% to 1% by using a 2-page job aid, right? So put some numbers behind that. You could think you've got, for example, a $50,000 expense versus a $5,000 expense in a 2-page job aid, all right? So, okay. And one more, so this is from high tech. So in this example, they were troubleshooting a system and they found no significant difference between the performance of A, an experienced group of expert technicians, and B, an inexperienced group of non-expert technicians who are using a job aid, right? So to throw some example numbers behind that, imagine, say, 5, these are cheap technicians, I guess. Imagine 5 expert technicians at $10,000 versus 5 non-expert technicians with job aids. Let's call that $2,500 who can accomplish the same results, okay? And so we're hoping to start to bring this to life for you. And we've got a couple of examples of or a few examples of our own we'll see. But let me bounce it back to you. So when, in chat if you would, let us know, when would you use a job aid? What are some situations or characteristics of a situation that would help you think, maybe I should use a job aid? So pop those into chat if you would. Okay, high risk, you need step-by-step instructions, thanks. Systems applications, step-by-step training, great, thanks. Complex processes, all right, machine operation, follow-up to new hire training, thanks, great. All right. Thanks. So to keep us moving, I'm going to go ahead and show you our list. So and these are things, and I'm thinking this is a pretty important slide among the slides that we're offering. So typically we think use a job aid when one or all of these things are present, right? So the task is performed with low frequency, and that's up to you. You know, it is once a year or once a month. You know, we often say use it or lose it. That's a time for a job aid if the frequency is low enough that people are not doing it. If the task is unusually complex, right? If failure results in dire consequences. In our resources page, we refer to a wonderful TED Talk by Atul Gawande named, or the TED Talk is named How We Heal Medicine. And he wrote the book Checklist Manifesto. And it's a fantastic book for helping you think about how to create job aids. He takes a stab at this, and his first attempt does not work. And he went to the airline industry for help, right? And the airline industry is just loaded with possibilities where failure results in dire consequences. So anyway, I'm using that as a way to just bring up the airline industry again. Or if the steps change often. We had a possible client who was in the insurance industry, and part of the reason they were interested in, we have an app called Job Aider that we'll introduce a bit later too, and they were interested in that because they were dealing with procedures that changed often and they had to let their people know. So, okay, so that's a slide to remember. So, all right. So, real quick, and I think we only have time for a few of these examples, so I'm just gonna blow through these pretty quickly, but these will be available on our resources page too. So, the first one, quick overview here. We were working with a solar power company, and they had they installed residential solar systems on residential rooftops, and they had contractors do the installation, but they needed to send employees, one of their employees, to go do the quality check. And they hired us. They only had a couple of experts, and they had a dozen or more experts they needed to train. They brought us in to help figure out how to train these up-and-coming quality technicians. And the first thing we said is, where are your procedures? Where's your job aid? And we got this deer in the headlights look. So the first thing we did was build a job aid for them. And this, these are just a couple of screenshots that help you see what we did with this. We helped them know the tools that they're going to need before they begin. These guys took a lot of photographs to capture what they were seeing on those rooftops, right? So we had to give them recommendations for taking photographs. One of the early conversations was, well, we rate everything from a 1 to a 5, and we're like, well, what does a 4 look like? What does a 2 look like? So we helped them understand the differences between the rating, the numbers for ratings. And this is just an example of a couple of photographs, one that represents a 4, one that represents a 2. Okay, so I'm hoping just kind of quick overview, you get a sense of what that was. They took what we created in, it was just a PDF that we gave them, but they went and created a digital version of this, okay? So the next one, these are a couple of airline checklists, and I'm not going to go through these, but they're at our resources page if you want to look at these. Okay, so I'll go ahead and move through these. This is an example of a job aid. This is the straw that broke the camel's back example. We had, for one of our high-tech clients, we had built some training on how to use social media better, for organizational purposes. And this was the job aid that they said they just loved it, and it was kind of what triggered this program. Again, I'm not going to go through the details of this. We just don't have time. This is a fun one. So we were building this, and Joe went to the dentist and came across this tool that they're using now to help them speed up the process of taking x-rays and be more accurate with it. So that's a device job aid. And okay, so this is one I want to take a moment on. This is a new one for us. We just completed this with a pharmaceutical company. And the situation was that there is a safety communications team. These guys tend to, part of their job is when adverse event occurs, these guys are the people responsible for communicating with whomever. It may be drug companies or investigators, physicians, patients, things like that. It seems like in the past there was an issue where there was a high severity incident that should have had a high severity communication going out with it, but they sent a low severity memo, and it didn't have the urgency, it didn't get the attention that it should have gotten. So they came to us for thinking about training, and we said, these guys are smart, they're motivated, we don't think they need training, they probably need a job aid, something to just help them either confirm or make a decision, right? So this is what resulted from that. And I'll just real quick overview here. So they would click start, and I'm hoping, oh, sorry, I gotta fake this. All right, so they click start, and then they would enter title in, let's see, there it goes. I enter a description, and then click continue, and then this asks them a series of questions. So here we go, so a couple of questions. Depending on the path, it could just be a few questions, it could be several. So it asks them a few questions, and then after answering these questions, it says, here's what you should do. Here are the SOPs, one or more SOPs that you should follow. So one of the requirements up front, the situation was such that they were saying whoever uses this is probably going to have to defend their decision in a meeting, so let's produce something that they can send ahead of time or take with them to the meeting to help them defend their decision. So at the very end, when they click continue, they get a summary and an ability to create a PDF that shows that summary. And that's it. So this took relatively few dollars to create, and has had a pretty significant impact in terms of helping people save money on training or reduce the need to do training. Okay, having trouble getting back. Oh, I mean, need to, here we go, hang on.
Hey, what's going on? Did we?
Sorry, I've got my link didn't work. I thought it was going to work. So let's see, advantages, when to use, examples. Okay, sorry, I'm there in just a second. Okay, oh, here we go. So we're back. All right, so last one. This is referenced in Atul Gawande's book, and I highly recommend checking it out. The story that he tells in the Checklist Manifesto is kind of wrapped around his interest in trying to produce a job aid that would help reduce mortality rates in emergency rooms. And so it's a great story. This is an example of what they produced, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this and just go ahead and get us to the steps. So Joe, are you about ready? I'll let you take over with the steps.
I'm here, ready to go.
Hey, there he is. Great. All right, so here we are. These are our 7 steps for creating job aids.
Yeah. And Russ, there was one question in the in the chat about what tool we use to build the decision tree job aid. I couldn't remember the
decision
name of
tool.
the
Yeah. Well, there were 2. We designed everything with a flow chart, this incredibly complex flow chart, but the tool that we used to create it was Tumult Hype. I think the tool is called Hype, and the company is Tumult. I'll type it in chat. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. So we're instructional designers at heart, like many of you. We love systems and we love models and we love systems that continuously improve on themselves. So we came up with our own little 7-step system or model to guide us on our way in developing job aids. And we'll take you through that here. Talk a little bit about what each step is composed, the components of each step and so forth. So really, the first thing you want to do with any good learning intervention, performance support intervention, of course, is, what is your outcome? What are you after? What are you trying to solve here? What do you want your users to be able to do at the end of the day that they weren't able to do before you began, or do better? What are the influences on this output? What types of things do you need to take into account? Who are your accomplished performers? And I have a question here. Maybe you can, let me know in chat. Is why would I want to know who the accomplished performers are rather than my subject matter experts? What do you think the reasons are behind that? What do we have here? Experience. Anybody else? Applicability. They know the shortcuts because they know how to do the job. Do the job and knowing the material. What mistakes? They know something that others haven't thought of. Exactly. So the accomplished performers, those are the people who are actually performing the task, right? They're in the field doing the thing that you want people to do by building the job aid. Whereas your subject matter experts are more of the people with the ideas and the processes and procedures in their head. They may know about the task or what it is you want to accomplish, but maybe they've never performed the task themselves. So accomplished performers are the people that we want to go after. We want to talk to them. We want to know the ideal way to perform the task. That's another reason to meet with our accomplished performers. They're the ones who, like someone said in the chat, they know all the shortcuts. They know the best way of getting the task completed in the right amount of time and the right way, or the fastest amount of time and the fastest way without and how to get around all the obstacles that may be in our way in performing the task. And then we also want to know what are those common errors that everybody always makes, and misjudgments. What are the wrong turns that they take when performing the task? We need to know those so we can prevent others from going down those paths as well. And then, are there any special circumstances that may be involved here? Certain groups of people that we may need to inform, or certain situations that might change based on us performing the task. All right, moving on to step 2. All right, this is a really important one. You want to make sure that your managers, your people who are your sponsors, your stakeholders, that you're aligning with them. You need to get their buy-in when creating job aids. If you don't have their buy-in, then it's going to be really hard for you to not only to design this in the right way or in an exemplary fashion, it's going to be really hard for you to get people to adopt it as something that they use in their everyday work. You also want to make sure that you're confirming expectations along the way, and you're getting the right feedback from people. One of the ways we love to confirm expectations and align ourselves with managers by using this tool that is the performance analysis flowchart. It's available on our resources page for this webinar, so go download it, use it as much as you'd like, and it's just a great way for you to make sure that you're aligned and receiving the right types of feedback from your stakeholders, your managers, your champions, and so forth. When it comes to defining the problems or outcomes that you're after, or problems you're solving, what kind of skills are you dealing with? Any and all information that you need to uncover along the way. It's just a great tool to guide you along that process. And then, you want to consider, how will this be introduced to my users? Who is going to make that introduction? Who will enforce and reinforce its use? And if you could in the chat, why don't you give me some examples of, maybe effective ways of enforcing use of job aids that you've used. Any examples of enforcing use that you've had success with? I don't see any yet, but I'm going to just throw out a couple here. How about building the job aid into the workflow of the end user group, so that as they're doing their work, they'll use the job aid automatically? You see this a lot in software, where there's job aids in the form of wizards and so forth. And then how about finding evangelists in the user group that you're targeting with the job aid? People who are on your side and see the need for the job aid and are out there evangelizing for you about the value of the job aid and so forth. Let's see, I had a colleague who embedded tries for a person who first came to her when they used the job aid. That's a good idea. Let's bribe people, right? I do that a lot with my kids. When I want them to accomplish something, I'll offer a little bribe. We had 1 to 2 job aids that were successful because they were attractive, pleasing to look at. Great. Yeah. All right, moving on to the next step. Format and medium. And we had a comment in the chat session while Russ was talking about examples of job aids that we've worked on or that we like. The question was, what's the difference between an infographic and a job aid? Well, infographic, of course, is just a type of formatting of information, whereas a job aid, as you know, since we've discussed it, is a container of information, right? So an infographic can be a job aid if you'd like. It could be a format that you use, and of course you can include it in the several formats that we have listed here. You have step-by-step, you have checklists, you have worksheets, you have decision tables. An example of the decision table was the decision tree that we built for the pharmaceutical industry. Essentially, it was a decision table behind that just was a bunch of rules that it was following as people were making choices along the way. Flowcharts, of course, are really popular types of job aids that you can use. So you want to make sure that you choose the right format for your situation. And of course, what about media? Well, you have a lot of different types of media that you can choose. You can create posters or paper, paper job aids. Digital job aids are becoming very popular, as you've seen with the pharmaceutical example that we put up. Audio job aids, video is becoming very popular because of the advent of the smartphone. You know, everybody has these smart devices in their pocket, on them all the time. It's just simple to whip out the smartphone, shoot a little video of yourself explaining a process or a procedure or someone else demonstrating a task, and then share that with some coworkers. A lot of times it may not be pretty, but it sure can be effective. And on that note, we'd like to give a little shout out to our Java Aider app. If you're not familiar with it, please go to the app stores and download it. It's a free download. You can install it, try it out, test it out with some coworkers, create some job aids, see what types of job aids we have already loaded up into Job Aider, and let us know what you think. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking for more people to try it out and see what they think about it, and tell us how it can be improved. Like I said, it's available at both Google Play and the iOS app stores. Moving on. Next step, number 4. This is when we start creating our drafts. So we've confirmed our outcomes. We've aligned with our managers and stakeholders. We've chosen a potential format and medium, and now we're going to create our draft. And really, we want to use simple language, be very clear and direct. Make sure we explain to the user what's in it for them. Why is this important for them? What's the advantage of them using this job aid? You always want to use action verbs, and you want to make sure you present the information in the smallest bits possible, or smallest chunks possible. Of course, you want to make sure that the context is in place as well, but this allows you not to overwhelm users with too much information at any one point, and make sure that as they're moving along the job aid, they can check their work and do it as accurately and efficiently as possible. And then, as needed, you want to certainly provide some examples. Russ brought up a good example of the solar installations where people were creating lots of graphics and taking photographs of good ways of installing the solar systems, and the not so good ways of installing the solar systems. Use photographs, use graphics or drawings or simulations in your job aids to demonstrate, the right and wrong ways of doing things. Where appropriate, of course. You don't want to make it, the job aid so exhaustive that it's just, too long or too hard for people to get through, but enough information and demonstration of the task that is helpful enough for people to accomplish what they need to accomplish. All right. After we've drafted our job aid, what's the next step? Hey, let's test it on some users. And really, we want real world users here. We want the people who are actually going to be performing the task in the field and using the job aid. You want to make sure when you're testing this is, where do people have difficulty? Is it complete and accurate, both the job aid and the task? Did I gather all of the information I needed to gather when I created the job aid? And does the job aid reflect that? Manage any special circumstances. Are there certain things that you missed? Maybe it's environmental. Is this a wet environment? Oh, wow. Do I have to create a job aid that can stand up to moisture? Is this a job aid that is going to be used in a high traffic situation? And I need to make it in such a way that people can glance at it or use it very quickly while still maintaining their attention on their customers, their partners, their coworkers. And you know, whenever we build job aids, we know we're on the right track when people are asking us for copies of the job aid, even before we have it complete and finalized. We know then that, hey, this is something important that people need, that is helpful, that they can use to do their jobs every day. Once we've tested our job aid, it's time to revise. We take all that information we've gathered from our test of the real users in the real work world, and we revise our job aid and we retest it and revise as many times as we can, as is appropriate, that the project allows you to. And of course, like any good system, this testing and revising, this is a continuous system. This is something that you're going to keep on revising and testing over the lifetime of the job aid, as long as it's useful. You never want to let it sit stale and not pay attention to it. And you want to make sure that you have a good system for capturing any revisions that you do make to the job aid. We've used a lot of systems to not only capture revisions of job aids, but the other types of projects that we do, such as Excel spreadsheets and Google Sheets and Microsoft SharePoint sites and Microsoft project management software. If you would, in the chat, let us know about some of the systems that you've used to track your revisions and feedback from users as you've not only developed job aids, but also other types of learning and performance interventions. We're always looking for other ways that we can help our clients stay on top of the interventions that we build. And then
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, sure.
Would you mind if I jump in quick and describe my favorite what do we call it, revision system? We would often use simply a Google Doc. We'd create, like a landing page, just a Google Doc that said, give us your comments here. And when we would create a job aid, like some of those that I described for you, there's a little link in the lower left-hand corner that says, if you have any comments about this job aid to improve it, go here. And we'd point them to that Google Doc. It's a very simple but effective way to collect comments from users of the job aid. So that's a really simple, fast, cheap one that I like a lot. So thanks.
Yeah, that is a great way. And like Russ said, we use it a lot on our projects. There's a question in the chat. What is the frequency to revise? Really, I think as long as your job aid is effective and in use, you're going to want to revise it as needed, as often as possible, as things change, really. You want to make sure that you keep it fresh. You're always coming back to it and taking a look at it. And actually, our next step 7, manage, really goes to that, where you're starting to think about, okay, the job aid has now been released. It's out in the wild. People are using it. How are we going to manage this in the long term? How are we going to continuously improve on this job aid? What kinds of revisions are we going to be making? How are we going to track those revisions? Who's going to initiate this work? Who's going to implement it? And who's going to keep track of it and admin it? In our last session, we had someone mention that whenever they develop job aids, they always appoint a job aid manager. That's the person who's going to be the point person for managing that job aid, and it's their responsibility. Even though it might not be a formal role within the organization. They just take it upon themselves within their group to anoint someone. Hey, you're the job aid manager for this job aid, or for this series of job aids, or maybe for all job aids. So it's really important to make sure that when you use job aids in your organization, that you manage them well and make sure they continuously improve. You don't want them to go stale, because then, your adoption rates of the job aids will, fall by the wayside, and their intended value will decrease over time, and you won't really get out of it what you wanted in the beginning. So we are moving on. Oh, this is a QR code. A lot of companies now are taking QR codes and putting them on their job aids, or putting them on in places in the organization where their job aids might be available. So say that you're a new employee and you've just been hired, and you get your office or your workstation. Companies would putting QR codes on the workstations or in the offices, where you scan it with your smartphone, and all of a sudden you have a series of job aids that are related to that work area or your office, or the equipment that you have to use in and around your office. If you scan this QR code with your smartphone, you'll be taken to a copy of this presentation. So we just thought that might be a good demonstration of how you can use this sort of technology to build to enhance access to job aids that you're developing. And I think that's all we have for the steps. Any questions you want to ask in the chat room, as we have a few minutes left here at the end of our hour. And Russ has just posted our resources page for the webinar. Thanks, Russ.
The QR code takes you to that resources page. So.
Yeah, and on that resources page.
And I should say,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Joe and I are happy to talk shop if you guys ever get stuck. We'll let you know if we're too busy to talk, but contact us if you're working on this and you've got questions. So, we should probably put up our contact information slide. Oh, so these are our resources, right? There's Atul Gawande and his checklist manifesto, and a couple of Alison Rossett's books. Those are referenced on our resources page, and this is how to get in touch with us. I don't know if Joseph made it to the program today. He was going to try and get in, but job aider inquiries should probably go to Joseph first, or Joe, either one. So, okay. Oh, Malou asked about tracking ROI from job aids. We're not that. Our clients aren't. They're not throwing enough money or resources behind our job aid projects to be doing that, and that's partly why we introduced the Joe Harless and his examples early in the program, with the chemical company and those kinds of things. Those help show a little bit of the ROI. So, yeah, we're looking for people to take job aider, and that'll help you track use of job aids better, and that might help with ROI conversations. So. What else? Yeah, Joe, do you see any other questions?
Yeah, Justin has just posted one. Let's see from the chat. How are employees accessing job aids via LMS portal, or do they receive handouts? Yeah, I think all of the above. I mean, I just read a recent survey that said the number one way that people are managing their workflow these days is email. Still, email is the number one way where people are sharing information across the organization. But certainly organizations are uploading to their LMSs, SharePoint sites, any content management systems that they're using within the organization. They're going to be posting job aids in those. Try out our job aider. I mean, it's a great way to share job aids across the organization. It's one of the reasons why we developed it. We saw a need to instantly share expertise across the organization. So we'd love to have you try that out and evaluate it. Resources page. Yeah, Russ pasted that. Let's paste that again. Here's the resources page.
Yeah, I just pasted it, and these sources that we list are referenced on the resources page, so you'll see that there.
Yeah,
too.
Books, all the job aids we mentioned in the presentation, they're all on the resources page. You can download them. The performance analysis flowchart is on that page. Our 7 steps infographic is on that page. Atul Gawande's TED Talk, this presentation, a recording of a previous presentation. So it's all there. Books we recommend.
And one of my favorites, a few Thanksgivings back, I created a turkey roasting flowchart, and that is available on our resources page. I highly recommend it. So.
Yeah, and I guess we're kicking it back to Justin now.
Back to Justin. Thanks, all. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe, and thank you, Russ. That was a good one, and I followed up to our last webinar, which was also great. So thank you very much for joining us and for sharing all this good stuff with us, and thanks, Malou, for kicking us off. Thanks for sticking around, folks. I'm going to send us over to some feedback slides, just so you can give us some feedback on the quality of the audio and some other items that we use for continuous improvement. So please, if you can stick around and fill out our feedback survey here, that's going to be a big help to us. Thank you all very much for joining. I feel like these webinars are gaining steam. We're selling out each time. So just really looking forward to the next one. So thank you guys. Thank TrainingPros. Thank our speakers. And please fill out the feedback slides and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you.